Okay, Charlie, we're going to talk about step 5, which is admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. I will be fascinated to hear you break this one down.
Okay. So, I've heard a lot of fifth steps in my day. Sometimes, and being a counselor, being a therapist, sometimes people will tell you things and I'm like, whoa, wait, stop. I need to hear this as an AA person or a 12-step person, because what you might be saying, you might want to really stop and think about that, because I don't really need to hear that. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
hearing things as a 12-step person puts it in a different perspective, because all I am doing is being that vessel for that person to remain honest with. And really what they're doing is having God present, and I'm the human that's present that represents God. Well, God works through me, if you will. So admitted to God. So this is about practicing the principles of honesty and fearlessness, courage, rigorous honesty, I might add. And yeah, it's a big step to take. On page 74 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a chapter called Into Action. So this really puts you into the action of getting better and cleaning your house and looking at things. It says that if you skip this vital step, you may not overcome your addiction. So to me, that's a big sentence. That's stating something really big. If you skip this, so that doesn't mean you can just take your inventory like we just talked about. You have to then be willing to let someone hear that. And I do believe that, and this is just my experience, that some of my clients that have committed suicide through the years, I've had a couple, but I know of one, and I think it was a sexual secret that they never told anyone. And I don't think people do a very good job of living with that stuff. So I really want to encourage anybody that's listening to this, just tell it to somebody. They're not there to judge you. They're actually there to do what the step says. It's to listen for the nature of the wrong. And the nature of the wrong means, is it about your social instinct? Is it like we discovered in the 4th step, where we discovered, is it about your security instincts? Is it about your sexual instinct? What does this have to do with? It's not about judging you or thinking that whatever it is that you have to say to somebody and God at the same time. I always remind people that the reason you know what to call it is because somebody else already did it, and that's why
Right.
it has a name.
Yeah.
And so, don't get into so much shame that you think you're the only person that's ever done this, because most of the time what you find is when you tell it to somebody, they're like, really? Oh, did you do that too? Or, was that your experience? Or, oh yeah, I've heard of that. Or, so you're not terminally unique. Don't make yourself so special that you would think that God thinks it's so awful that no one could hear it, because that's not true. It is written in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous on page 75. It says, he should realize that we are engaged upon a life and death errand. I'm going to say that again. It's a life and death errand. And if you don't run this errand in your life, you can die from this.
Right.
Carrying secrets, is what you
Yes.
can die from. And holding all those secrets. And I realized today that until I did my first 5th step, which was mostly about what everybody had done to me, but my sponsor was nice enough to listen to all that the first time, it was eating me alive, and actually what my experience was when I got through with my 4th step, with my 5th step, with her, with saying it out loud. I made that appointment with someone to listen to that for me. Something came up that I had forgotten for 35 years, that I
Wow.
had buried. And guess what it was? A sexual secret.
Yeah.
No surprises, right? And I'm like, oh my God, where did that come from? And it just came popping up because I was willing to be honest with that person and God at that moment. And, I do believe God will give you everything you need to take care of you. And all I had to do was just say it out loud. It was like one of those things. It's like, oh my gosh, I forgot all about that. And so once that was out, it was like I never had to worry about it or think about it again. So that's the person that you want to pick to do your fifth step with. Is I encourage everyone to pray about it, and you may have a sponsor you really like, but it may not be the person you want to do your fifth step with. You might want to do it with somebody else. Now, I've also heard some crazy stories about how someone would get in a taxi cab, and the cab driver didn't speak English. You just drive around for an hour and just say it all out loud, because that's technically, you said it out loud to yourself and God. But I don't really think that's what the step is asking you to do. I think that it really helps if you can find someone who will help you discover the nature of the wrong. So that's what I said. When you discover that your assets or your character defects gone awry, many of them are, let's say, what in the world, if you had a pattern of things on your fourth step, let's say, that had to do with anger. So we discovered together, if I was listening to your fourth step, I hear anger throughout this whole thing. What, let's say, anger would be the character defects we really want to look at and talk about, not each individual little thing that you did to shame you with, but the fact that I hear anger throughout this story of you that you're telling me. What if anger is a character defect in this sense of the word? What would be the asset that had gone awry? Because anger really is about justice. You know, when you make yourself angry, your thoughts are that something isn't right, fair, just, or okay. And many times for us, things are done to us that aren't fair and right and just and okay. And so you're going to feel anger about that. So anger is not necessarily a bad thing. It is if you use it on somebody, if you hurt somebody with it. But that's what we would need to look at, is something like that. So you could see how your anger, that you had a right to feel angry, but look what you've done with it. And then you got drunk, or you acted out sexually, or you're trying to medicate yourself with all that anger. That would not be a good thing, because you're using it against yourself and other people. That way you discover in your fifth step what happened and the process of that. So it says in the book that after you discuss this with someone and God, that you find a quiet place to go home and reflect, and to spend an hour being really quiet and in contemplative prayer, that you make connection with your higher power. So when you're asking God, is there anything else? You know, did I miss anything? Did I skip anything? Like in my case, something came popping up while my sponsor was still sitting there. But that could have happened after I got quiet later. But I did that. I got really quiet, and I got still, and I thought over what I had said. And it says very clearly, if you forget something, just call them up and tell them. It's not the end of the world. You don't have to go, you didn't screw it up, nothing's wrong. You just simply say it. And that takes care of that. And if you think of it later, let's say you think of it next week, that's okay too. No one is asking you to be perfect in your fifth step. It says we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. We're not saints. So people have to stop worrying about trying to be perfect. We're not perfect here, and we're not supposed to be. So the steps are finding your defects of character and writing them down. And in one of my step packets here, I have a lot of defect of character words for you to look at that are, that can kind of give you some ideas about maybe what some of those are in your patterns of defects of character. I had one in the sex addiction packet that was curiosity. So you think of curiosity as being something that's all humans, we want to have natural, curiosity, and that's where we get our spontaneity, unless it's getting taken away from us. And so our curiosity, though, when it becomes a character defect, can be, hey, I don't need to know that. I don't need to look at that. I didn't need to look that up. I didn't need to look at that. I didn't need to know that. And that can be very sexually harmful for someone where their curiosity went awry. So that could be a word that maybe sometimes people don't even think of. And cheating and coward, destructiveness, deviousness, favoritism, lust, lying, meddling, self-seeking, thrill-seeking, uncleanliness, vulgarity, waste, things like that. When the person that hears your fifth step is looking for those kind of things. That helps you to discover the patterns of your fourth step of your inventory. So you're looking at all the inventory to see what happened here. You know, how did I get so far off the track in life that I'm working the steps in a 12-step program? So any questions or comments you have about the fifth step?
Well, one of the things you've mentioned your packet, which is available on charlierisien.com. So
Okay.
It will be on the website too, but charlierisien.com has that whole packet that you've referred to. So people can go there and find that packet and download it. It's free. And utilize that. I think I would have been poorly served by getting in a taxi cab and sharing mine with somebody. I needed somebody. I think the freeing thing about the fourth and fifth steps, particularly for me, was having somebody listen to it, identify the patterns, but also normalize it. Like you talked about, somebody did that too.
Yeah, really.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. When somebody said that's a typical female alcoholic behavior, I was like, you know,
right.
The terminal uniqueness, the shame and the horrible.
The shame.
Yeah. Like, and I know for sure, I really in my heart of heart believe that I would have relapsed, you know, because the guilt and the shame. One of the things that I discovered with the fourth and fifth step, it was so freeing, you know, like I left all that garbage. I didn't have to continue to carry that with me. There were things that came up later, but I think some of that was, I was so protected, you know, like I couldn't even quite get there at that early stage, but like you also talked about the steps, you repeat them, you know, so there's opportunity.
Yes.
And whether it's like you mentioned, step 10, we'll catch up, you know, we can do little catch ups, but it's okay when, you know, I did 2 really major fourth steps, and then I've done, you know, little pieces beyond that, but I did 2 really major fourth steps. And then I've had people that, you know, we've talked about where we go, okay, I need to do a 4 step on this area of my life. Great. You know, I think anytime we're looking at ourselves and our relationship to other people, you know, it's a good thing. You know, it's good for us to be aware. I think when you talked about anger, you know, somebody was able to point out to me that anger is a great cover for hurt. And I loved anger, and I mean this, I loved anger because it was powerful, and hurt feels like a victim. And so I used anger. I used it a lot. And I had to learn to understand that that was not helpful for me. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not done a fourth and fifth step. You know, it took those things to help identify what was really going on for me. But anger and, quite frankly, rage, you know, was where it came out. You know, that was not useful, and that was not who I really intrinsically wanted to be. So these steps, you know, and particularly the fourth and fifth step, gave me a place to identify those things and knowledge, and also the normalization of, well, you know, of course you're hurt, and, you know, of course you're a victim. So this is where it's going to come out. And then as we'll continue to talk, there's more steps and more tools that, you know, help me move past that. But I don't know what to work on if I don't know what it is. So
that's
this is how you figure it out.
It's great discovery here. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the 6th and 7th step, because if you think these 2 were bad, the 6th and the 7th step is kind of where the rubber meets the road. So we'll talk about that next.
But they're all part of how we make our life different, because what we didn't have to start working well, we don't have to, but we didn't choose to start working steps because everything was going hunky-dory in our lives. It's like,
that's right,
we had a problem, and this is a step-by-step, literally, way to get to something different and have tools so that we can deal with life rather than have to escape back into our addictions.
Exactly. No more escape.
Right.
Life is doable.
Well, I remember one of the sayings I learned early in recovery was, the elevator to recovery is broken. Please use the steps. And that was really helpful for me. It was like, oh, it's in the steps,
that's
you
so
know,
cute.
and there's no shortcut way to just push a button and get there. That was the other thing about that.
That's right. Not the easier, softer way, is there?
Exactly.
There really is not one. I know. Well, I'm glad to see you again, and I look forward to step 6.
Me too. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.